Actually, I think I think one of the things that you are very passionate and good at is like migrating organizations from the the instinct and the magic to like something more process oriented and scalable. What are some early signs of like detecting when to start that journey? Like when do you start a VOC program, and what are some early signs that the magic is not going to scale? You need something better to scale the learning from customer feedback part.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think you do have to start with the magic. Like, I think if you start trying to categorize everything right out of the bat, like you don't have enough information, you don't have those instincts to start with to even understand where to start. But where it can start breaking down is as your organization grows, as your number of customers grows, as your product grows in complexity. To Michael's point, like it becomes almost impossible to retain that instinct in an accurate way. And so you have the institutional historical knowledge of what the top customer concerns are. That doesn't necessarily hold 6 months, a year down the line. And if you don't put some process in place and some data integrity in place sooner rather than later, that institutional historical knowledge is going to persist and be inaccurate. So like if we had not started to put a lot of process in place here, there would still be a perception among folks who've been at Notion long enough that our users' top request is offline mode. And yes, I know many people want offline mode. We do hear you, but it is not the top request anymore. As our products grow in complexity, as our user base is growing in complexity, like there are other top requests. And so it starts breaking down when information doesn't change. It starts breaking down when everything's flying around on Slack and no one knows where to find anything. And like Slack and casual conversations are not good data. They don't have good data integrity. You can't track them. You can't aggregate them. You can't follow up, be accountable to following up on them.
Yeah. So really good points here. And then John, would love your perspective on this as well. I mean, you were there at probably a very special moment in digital products history where like pre and post COVID, like the feedback volume for Zoom must have skyrocketed by I don't know how many multiples. So how did that change the product building process? Because I mean, you saw what spike in volumes. I don't think anyone else will ever see like that amount of volume. Anything you want to share from that experience? What you've learned, reflecting on the last couple of years?
So I joined Zoom in January of 2020. So literally about 5 weeks before the internal chart started changing their behavior pretty quickly. And so in a 4-month time span, a lot of intake sources of information grew at 30, 40, 50x in a few months. So I had certainly not seen anything like that. And it probably impacts the 3 things that I'll share now in terms of the answer to your question, like what breaks at scale. The first one, and I think this was mentioned already, is sort of what breaks down is a total view of everything, and a way to get it and a way to make sure that the right people have it. So that the same people understand that what enterprise is asking for is not the same as what free is asking for. And in our case, we've got verticals and all the segments and all the use cases. So it gets pretty tricky. So that total view is really, really, really difficult to maintain, to even produce, and then to pay attention to and bring to bear. This gets especially tricky when you bring in enterprise dynamics, because you can have 10 very large customers that are the same revenue as 1,000 smaller customers. And except the difference is the 10 largest customers for sure have your CEO's phone number. And so the dynamics are just different, and it's a very natural and human thing. And as an enterprise company, you do have to pay attention to your large customers. But the challenge from a feedback perspective is to still keep the broader context in place when those thousands of voiceless many might not have as much internal volume, so to speak. So that's some of the challenges. And Zoom is very, very customer focused, and so we do try and balance all this stuff. I think the second thing that I would say that breaks is just tooling and process, right? We certainly went from a place where some intake sources were manageable by a human once a week to completely impossible and definitely needing software help and tooling. And there's lots of different tools that are relevant, because the type of feedback can vary so dramatically, right? NPS is not the same as open feedback, is not the same as social media monitoring, is not the same as customer advisory boards. Like, these are all, I don't think there's one wonder tool that covers, I know Enterpret covers a lot of it, but this is very, very difficult tooling and process challenge when you start scaling up. And then the third one that might be a little more specific, but is a little bit based on our experiences, depending on the channels that you've set up, managing expectations around what people can get out of that channel is actually an interesting thing, because in a lot of cases, if you open up feedback forms here and there, people sort of think it's like support and they created a ticket and action's going to happen and somebody will get back to them, when actually it's, please let us know what you think and thanks for it, but that's it. We're not going to talk to you anymore. And that also breaks down at scale if you're not setting the right expectations in the input form itself. And so those are probably my top three.